All right. So number 3, technical debt. This is a big one. What is technical debt? First, I'll define it for you. Technical debt is something that it's the principle whereby anytime you add something to a code base, it makes the code base harder to make future changes because there's more code, there's more of the application itself that you need to think about and to handle if you want to make some kind of change to that code. And when I say some kind of change, that could be something trivial like adding a field to a property, like we were talking earlier, or it could be quite large. So it's like, oh no, we need this whole new module. It's a whole area of functionality and it has to work with the existing code base. And the more complex that code base is, the more technical debt it has, the harder it is to bolt that piece on. And that could be for architectural reasons, but it could also be for understanding reasons, in the sense that if it's complete spaghetti and no one can understand it, then how do you know if by adding something onto it, you're not going to break a whole bunch of stuff? Maybe you will. Maybe you'll break all kinds of things and you end up spending the next month trying to figure out, how did it break? Why did it break? What can I do to fix it? That's a bad situation to be in terms of the code base for maintainability. So now we know kind of what technical debt is. What do we do about it? The best advice I've ever heard about technical debt came from someone who used to work at Atlassian. I used to work with him on one of my previous companies. And he told me, I was at the time, it was the first time I'd been CTO and was kind of finding my feet. And he told me, regardless of what the product owners want you to put into a sprint, always reserve 20% of the time off the top of that sprint for refactoring. And he said 20% of that time is for the technical team to implement what they know needs to happen on that code to avoid the situation of having a mountain of technical debt that you can't do anything with anymore. So if we're talking about one thing to take away from any particular section here in the webinar that we're talking about, definitely 100%, what I would suggest is do not overpack your sprints. The easiest way to guarantee you're going to get technical debt is to say, okay, well, here's our sprint. Great. We're just going to pack it with as much stuff as we possibly can because we've got this, short development time and we're under pressure for various reasons. Well, I can tell you what will happen. The development team will look at that and sure, they might get through that sprint okay and not feel time pressure, maybe. But will they do that every time? Every sprint, will they be able to nail that so that they're not under time pressure? I can tell you, no, that won't happen. So the temptation will be that when they start feeling that time pressure, they're going to start cutting corners. They're going to start doing things a little bit faster to try and meet that sprint goal. And as soon as they do that, they're going to be adding more and more technical debt. So the principle of reserving 20% from the top, effectively, of the time available in a sprint, just for the developers to work on what they know needs to happen, is the best remedy I've seen for ensuring that long-term you don't grow a bunch of technical debt and then have a mess. What I can tell you is that, I've been around for a while, so my career goes back almost 25. In fact, it does. Well, yeah, 25 years now. So, wow. I've seen some really good code bases that are really well maintained, and I've seen some horrendous code bases. Typically speaking, when people talk about rewrites, as in, do I have to rewrite the application? What they're really thinking about is often, this wasn't designed here. It's like the not made here syndrome, which is, we didn't build it. We want to do it our own way. And often rewriting it is not the right course of action. Most of the time, in fact, it's not the right course of action. And you need to kind of encourage people not to adopt that it wasn't made here mentality and accept whatever code base they've received to maintain or to develop on and to make it work ultimately. Ideally in the same pattern, the same architectural pattern. But there are occasions, despite that advice, where the code is so bad, where there's so much technical debt that the effort to fix it through refactoring as you go will well exceed the time it will take to actually redo it. And typically when people think about the time required to develop something from scratch, they tend to underestimate it. Most developers will do that. They'll underestimate because it's very easy to confuse simple with quick. The two are not the same. So even though something may be simple to do, it still takes time to do. And so that's why from what I've seen, why often developers will underestimate the time required to do something. But despite the fact that people often underestimate the time required to rewrite something, sometimes rewriting something is actually the right thing to do. And it depends upon where the code or the application is in its life cycle, how much future changes you think are going to be required, and ultimately, how much time is being spent holding that little handle in the back of that car to keep this thing afloat, or to keep it driving, as to use the car analogy. So to recap, how do you avoid a rewrite on a code base? Well, you need to refactor as you go along to pay down the technical debt as you continue developing. What's the best way to guarantee of doing that? It's to not overpack the sprints, to leave the technical team enough time that they can work on what they know needs to happen. And I can guarantee you, the people that are in the code, they know what needs to happen. They see it, they work with it, they know the pain points. They will see things that they think, oh, you know what? Why are we doing it this way? Why are we making this so hard for ourselves? Why couldn't we just do this? And if you allow them time to do that, then they will be able to reduce the technical debt over time and to thereby improve the maintainability of that code.